And we are live. Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Wednesday, April 2nd. I am Josh Engleman, joined by Greg Ehrenberg. We're brought to you by Stokastic or OddsShopper. Sign up for everything we have. It'll be awesome. We've got 8 games today on DraftKings, 9 on FanDuel. Lots of injury news to wait for, and it looks like we're rostering the entire San Antonio Spurs basketball team, so that should be fun. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live, and follow us both on Twitter. Greg, you excited for tonight?
Yeah, I did really well in last night's slate, so felt pretty good about that. As was foretold, Josh, it was a good old stars and sluts slate last night. We got lots of cheap guys that had good games, and then you had the Giannis, Steph Curry. So you needed to have the 2 stars last night. It was a super high scoring slate, but I made out well on it. And we're going to have some interesting things to talk about today because you just mentioned the Spurs and the value that exists on them. Well, on the Denver side, get a load of this injury report on the Denver side of the game. Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Christian Brown, and Peyton Watson, all questionable to play. I think this could be a good old scrubs versus scrubs game.
It might just be because on the San Antonio side, no Charles Bassey. No Jeremy Sohan, no Devin Vassell, no the rest of their guys that had been out, and a Q tag on Keldon Johnson. Let's start it off on San Antonio just because coming out of our boom bust tool, they rank 1st, 2nd, 4th, 7th, and 8th. We have 90% ownership coming into $3,400 Julian Champagny, 70 more coming into Mamu off the bench, 30 more for Castle and Barnes. 25 to Chris Paul, 10 more for Biyombo, a little bit more for Keldon Johnson. Where do you want to start? You can go wherever. It's all insane.
Sure. So the first thing about this is I love that we have all this value on the Spurs side. The reason why is because what I just mentioned before about the injuries on the Denver side, because I don't know if everybody's going to sit out for Denver. I don't know if some guys are going to sit out for Denver, but considering that this game is one that they probably are going to win as long as they have somebody suit up for them, it's a tail end of a back-to-back. They played in a double overtime game. They also held out some guys last night. Russell Westbrook absolutely fucked up the game for them last night. They should have won the game, but Russell Westbrook had other designs in mind. So here's my overall point that I'm going to be getting to here. I'm going to play a lot of Spurs, guys. I don't think they are going to be in my lineups at the same rate that they're going to be in before the slate starts, but we are going to have the flexibility to turn those Spurs guys into Denver guys in the event that Denver players get ruled out. So I think it makes a ton of sense. No matter what you think of these Spurs guys, they project really well. So maybe you're looking at and be like, I don't know that Champagny should be in 90% of lineups. Yeah, maybe it's a crazy high. Like he's not actually going to end up being 90% owned, but just play these guys who project really well on a points per dollar basis. And then you could flip them into other players as the night goes on.
Yep. This game starting at 9 o'clock makes it very easy to overload on the San Antonio side right now and just deal with it as it goes. Because we got 3 games that lock at 7. Then we have a 7:30, an 8, an 8:30, a 9, and a 9:30. So plenty of opportunities after that first run out of ownership for those 7 o'clock games. Getting to a ton of San Antonio is going to be very easy. I'm assuming you're going to have somewhere in the neighborhood of a full lock button on Champagny heading into lock.
Yeah, I've got a sim running right now because we did get a data update just before the show started. So updating everything right now. So I don't know what the exact percent. I'll know the exact percentage in like 10 seconds from now. But the odds of me having 100% of Champagny is way more likely than me having 50% of him.
Yeah, he's in 100% of my stuff right now. I think, and as long as he's starting, I don't think that it's all that crazy. How do you want to manage the 2/3 ownership coming into $3,500 Sandro Mamukelashvili?
Yeah, so he is somebody who I could very, very easily see falling by the wayside. If you look at all of the value and I mean, if he starts, obviously totally different scenario, but assuming he comes off the bench, he's one of the easiest guys who could end up falling by the wayside, both in terms of projected ownership and then also how often he's in our lineups. Because as long as Champagny starts, it's hard to imagine that he is not going to be an excellent value play. If Mamu's coming off the bench, it's pretty easy to envision a bunch of guys end up projecting better than him post-lock.
Yeah, maybe. The Keldon Johnson news will be interesting because they just really don't have any bigs. Chris Paul's a guard, Castle's a guard, Wesley's a guard, McLaughlin's a guard. Malachi Branham's not exactly a big guy. Even like Champagne to a degree. So if Keldon Johnson ends up out, I think you just kind of have to get enough minutes for Mamu to be a value no matter what. If he's in, then it does become a situation where like they could go a little smaller if they want to. I think the Jokic status would matter a little bit more there. But I do kind of feel like he has to get a decent chunk of minutes. I'm not sure he's going to go anywhere no matter what changes.
If in this scenario where, and once again, if he starts, Keldon Johnson's ruled out, it kind of changes the equation. But let's say Jokic, Murray, Porter Jr., Brown, and Peyton Watson all sit. I think there's going to be like 4 Denver guys who become higher priorities than Mamu.
I don't know. They're all such bad per minute guys. That's the only concern for me. Mamu's like a 1.2 guy. All these Denver dudes are like 0.7s.
Yeah, except some of those Denver guys would be projected to play close to like 40 minutes in that scenario.
Sure.
If all of the guys who are questionable are ruled out for Denver, they have Westbrook, Pickett, Najee, DeAndre Jordan, Kankar, PJ Hall, Hunter Tyson, Trey Alexander. Like they're going to have 10 guys available who are all dog shit players. But like DeAndre Jordan has still been an excellent fantasy producer.
Yeah. If you give Zeke Najee 30 minutes at his current rate, he would project 3 fantasy points behind where we have Mamu right now. Yeah, just as a reference point.
Yeah, but okay. So here are the guys who I am most thinking about. Pickett, because if you look at the potential available guards for them, he would have to take on a massive role. DeAndre Jordan, another one. We then would kind of have to see the other guys who fill out the starting lineup. Like maybe it's Hunter Tyson, maybe it's somebody else. But there's going to be guys who start for them. Who, and by the way, this is all hypotheticals because I do find it very unlikely that all these Denver guys end up playing after the double overtime game last night. But there's going to be guys who are very cheap for Denver who you are just going to have to project for over 30 minutes.
Without question. If it breaks that way, like we're going to have a lot of it. My only concern is like Jalen Pickett, 0.7, Zeke Najee, 0.75, Hunter Tyson, 0.7. I think Mamu's going to still look better than most of those guys. DeAndre Jordan might be the slight difference. You give him 28 minutes, he ends up getting to like 6.5x. He'll be the guy, I think, if we get him back in that starting lineup. But it's a hell of a spot to pay attention to. We don't know what it's going to look like, but it's going to look like something different.
It's also hilarious. The DeAndre Jordan starts, he plays like point forward. They run the entire offense through him. But the way it works is it's all dribble handoffs where he kind of sets moving screen, just runs into people, and he just racks up assists. So the first 6 minutes of DeAndre Jordan starts, it is just like 20. It's just 20 handoffs in a row.
How do you want to handle somebody like Chris Paul who plays 20 minutes some nights and 30 minutes some nights? The 30-minute night makes him dramatically underowned at 23%. I think he's underowned just in general. But at the same time, you know, you're sitting all these guys. Maybe they just played Jordan, McLaughlin, and Chris Paul plays those 20 minutes today. It's the variance in his playing time is scary.
Yeah. So as far as Chris Paul goes, I currently have a good amount of him. He's currently in 40% of my lineups. I'm very concerned about it, especially because he played a decent amount of minutes last night. It's the tail end of a back-to-back. 28 minutes for him last night. Let's see. What has he played in other? Yeah, if you look at other back-to-backs, which this is actually going to be the 2 games in a row, or 2 sets of games in a row that the Spurs played a back-to-back. The last time he played 35 minutes on the front end, but only 18 minutes on the back end. Last night he played 28 minutes. So I'm definitely concerned about his workload. There's a ceiling there, and his price is very clearly too low. But I'm viewing him mostly as a placeholder to flip into other guys post-lock.
Okay, I think that's reasonable. Castle, I don't have much to say. Barnes, I don't have much to say. They just look like solid 25 to 30% owned dudes. Keldon Johnson will be interesting if he's in. Do you think they're going to mess around and get some Bismack Biyombo?
Probably not. Let me see. What do I have of him? Yeah. I have 16% of him right now, and I know just for sure these Spurs ownerships are going to dip in my lineups as we get more and more news. So he's somebody who, not like a fade or anything like that, but he won't be. I don't see a scenario he'd be taking up a meaningful amount of my lineups. I'm also, I do think there's a pretty good chance that Mamu starts over him today, especially if Jokic isn't there.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, if that happens, we're gonna have 200% owned guys.
Yeah. So that's also where there's like a range of outcomes with Mamu. If he comes off the bench and other value opens up, then I don't know how much of him I ultimately end up getting to. But if there is no Jokic, like why would the Spurs even need the size? I mean, why do the Spurs need the size of Biyombo for anything anyway? But especially in a scenario where Jokic isn't there and the tail end of a back-to-back, I could see Mamu starting over Biyombo in that scenario.
Wouldn't surprise me. Not the only centers we got to talk about, though, today. Let's travel over to Oklahoma City, where the Pistons are live to get bludgeoned by the Thunder. However, no Marcus Sasser, no Ron Holland, no Beef Stew, thanks to a suspension, is leading to $3,100 Paul Reed off the bench, 30% owned in 36% of my lineups right now. How are you managing Paul Reed? Because this is another backup off the bench that is quite owned.
Yeah. So as far as Paul Reed goes, one of the most frustrating players in DFS over the last couple of years because he's a great fantasy producer. I don't think he sucks for real life either, but teams just don't like to give him opportunities. He's been on a handful of different teams. And remember, Glenn Rivers at one point had said that Paul Reed was going to be his backup center, and then Paul Reed was not his backup center. He went to DeAndre Jordan ahead of him. It seems wherever Paul Reed goes, Paul Reed seems like he's going to get playing time that ultimately doesn't end up coming to fruition. Once again, though, here's what I like about Paul Reed and why I have him in a third of my lineups. Game starts at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. Better value opens up. Cool. You could swap Paul Reed out to other guys. I would feel way different about Paul Reed if he was starting at 7 p.m. Eastern time as opposed to 9:30 p.m.
Paul Reed, by the way, 3,800 on FanDuel. Also very interesting there. But yeah, the start time of this game makes it so I love to have it. If it becomes some Denver later on in the night or more San Antonio or something, totally cool with me. But yeah, like we have him for 17 and a half minutes right now. Jalen Duren can play worse. This game could be what we think it is, and he plays like the entire fourth quarter. Like there's a lot of upside in that minutes number. Not a lot of guys behind him either. So I'm digging the Paul Reed status for today. Now we've touched on a lot of the San Antonio side. Another spot that's ranking pretty well for us is the Cleveland Cavaliers against the Knicks. 30% ownership coming in Donovan Mitchell. He ranks 5th in our boom bust tool. He's 30% optimal. Evan Mobley is 30% optimal. He ranks 6th, but only 18% owned. How are you looking at Donovan Mitchell and Mobley in this matchup against the Knicks? I kind of like Mobley given the slightly lower ownership number, but I have the exact same amount of both of them.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Karl-Anthony Towns ruled in. So we do have that as official news here for the New York Knicks. Let's see. So for guys like Mobley, Donovan Mitchell. So one thing I think is going to be really important for this slate, kind of something really similar we talked about last night. We need to find spend up options, like desperately. Yeah. And I right now have a chunk of Jokic in lineups because I didn't project him to be out. And there is a risk here of if you are playing Nikola Jokic and he gets ruled out, what are you swapping to later on in the night, depending when that news breaks? So I actually do want to tamper some of my exposure to Nikola Jokic because if I'm forced to make a stand right now, whether he's in or out, I think the most likely scenario is that he's out. That seems way more likely to me, considering they've already been cautious with him. He just sat out a bunch of time with an elbow injury. They played a double overtime game last night where he played, 50 something, like just ridiculous minutes, yep. 60 plus points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists. So the way this relates to Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley is where these guys are locking early at 7 p.m. Eastern time. I'm most inclined to want to be a little bit heavier on expensive guys that project really well in early games when we are more apt to get value that opens up later. And that's where guys like Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, I do think could be important pieces to the slate. Between the two of them, Donovan Mitchell is the higher priority for me. I actually have Mitchell right now in 34% of lineups, and I like that quite a bit because of the reasons I just laid out.
I'm expecting to get to a decent chunk of these guys given what I have now, and I assume that it's going to be Mobley. But while you were saying that you had a decent chunk of Jokic, I have 44% of Shea right now held
Okay.
up in that 930 spot and half the field of Nikola Jokic. So that's actually breaking perfectly for me so far. That's what I would want it to be. I'm easily getting to the guy that I expect to be the main pay up option after we get this Denver news in a matchup where he should carve these guys up. He's been carving up these blowout matchups lately. He's getting 30 points in like the first 2.5 quarters. Might have to do it in 28 minutes, but it looks like Shea is going to be my priority pay up. Were you getting to him or were you getting to more of Jokic?
I currently I have almost an identical amount of the two of them right now.
Okay.
But like I said, I am going to give an ROI downgrade to Nikola Jokic, which then in turn is going to get me to more of just about all of the expensive guys on the slate. One also that really stands out to me from a game that we were just talking about, because he is very low owned right now. Cat didn't play last night, and it's really hard to figure out what this actually means for teams. But Cat didn't play yesterday.
Yep.
Bridges did. Hart did. Anunoby did. And these guys had to play increased workloads. Just from like a common sense sort of standpoint, it makes sense that Cat would be fresher than these guys. And with that being the case, maybe get a little bit of extra usage to go to Cat. He's actually my favorite contrarian spend up option right now. He's projected for single digit ownership, so people aren't really getting there. You've got the opportunity for all this value to be opening up later. So if people aren't going to be playing Cat because they're trying to reserve lineup spots for Jokic, who I don't think is going to play, give me some Cat in an early locking game.
I only have 11%, but I like the shout. Obviously, not your favorite Cat matchup going against this Cleveland front court, but I mean, he's pulling 9% ownership in a spot where he could play 38 minutes in a competitive matchup. I'm with you. Like, he feels like he's going a little underrepresented. Let's not forget, there's no Mitchell Robinson backing him up today. And Tibbs doesn't seem to like Precious Achiuwa all that much. So could be a day where you get extra minutes from Cat. Yeah. Kind of want to get a little bit more of him now. I like that shout out.
Yeah, I mean, we had last night. Precious was in a spot where he ended up being, crazy owned last night, Precious. And we had talked about the merits of maybe having more of Mitchell Robinson than Precious, especially because Robinson was starting and Achiuwa came off the bench. And you had a guy, Mitchell Robinson, who just played the bulk of the minutes. That meant Precious Achiuwa didn't get the minutes. And Robinson absolutely destroyed the slate last night. So,
Yep.
I definitely think, especially in a matchup like this, where Tibbs really, really gives a shit about the regular season in a way that most teams don't, I think he cares about a matchup against Cleveland in a way that almost no other teams would, especially at this point in the season.
Agreed. I would not be surprised to see stupid minutes on these guys again, because it's all he knows. It's just what he does. It happens over and over and over again. Speaking of things that should happen over and over again, 1,700 people in the door. Hit that like button, guys. No reason we can't run that number up. We don't have to set it up for people after us any longer. I would like to reap the benefits of exceptionally large like numbers on this video. So hit that thumbs up if you can, because we still have technically 2 days left of the cycle promo, MLB DFS. If you sign up at this moment right now, you'll pay $1 and you'll get it for the rest of today and you'll get it for tomorrow. And that will cover you. On the 4th, it will re-up for whatever you sign up for. Weekly, monthly, core, max, whatever it's going to be. It's projections, it's ownership, top stacks, top pitchers, top batters, single lineup sim, contest generator, regular sims, post-contest sims, Discord. You get it all for $1. Not a lot of days left in the deal, but that doesn't mean you can't come check it out. Maybe you just need to get a little bit of a taste. Well, you can do that taste for $1 using the promo code CYCLE. Link in the description. What haven't we talked about yet that you're interested in? Because we've touched on all of the heavy chalk. Anybody you're taking a stand on that's not grabbing so much ownership other than Karl Anthony Towns?
Yeah. So Cat right now, that is my big stand for somebody who's like really low owned on the slate. Another one, though, you had mentioned before, SGA, he's not pulling all that much ownership. He definitely makes sense as another one. Unless we had an ownership update since I last looked. And, people kind of know how I like to play these slates, talked about it last night, and it's going to be the case for me again today. it's not going to make sense to get away from these like uber well projected chalk cheap pieces. Instead, I want to differentiate by paying up for guys like SGA, paying up for Karl Anthony Towns. So we are on the same page to where SGA only pulling 12% ownership, at least the last run I done from looking at the data. Cat only pulling single digit ownership. Those are the two guys who right now I'm getting to the most of. There are other guys as well who I'm overweight to, but it's players who are in early locking games that I don't really want to be getting to all that much. So I'm going to tamper down a little bit. Cat and SGA are the big ones for me at the moment.
All right. Well, I'm with you on the SGA side. If I'm looking through my exposure at like anybody else, I'm taking a bit of a stand on. Chris Paul, Paul Reed, Shea. There's not too many other options. We seem very similar. Tyrese Halliburton, a little bit. I mean, I guess technically Evan Mobley, but I just have so much of the chalk that I don't have much else. I mean, when you have one guy in Julian Champagny in literally everything, I have Mamu right now in 92% of my stuff. There's not a lot of other guys that I can be over the field on. I just run out of roster spots and ownership. Do you think that anybody out there today looks unappealing that people are getting to?
All right. So unappealing. Yeah, it's hard to say because like the super chalk options, the answer to me is, like Champagny should be really popular. As things stand right now, Mamu should be. Although, like I said, depending on the scenario, I might even, if he starts, I might even like him more. But if other value opens up, he's probably somebody who end up being underweight to the field too. Here's going to be the biggest one for me that could certainly end up aging poorly. Nikola Jokic is the most popular spend up option on the entire slate, and he is very, very expensive.
Yeah.
There's a scenario here where he just doesn't play. We don't find the news until later, and people are stuck with him in a way where it's really hard to get off of him.
Yeah, you're not exactly going to be stoked about swapping to anything from the San Antonio side because both of those centers are 3,500. The Denver fix is also going to be in the 3K range, essentially, or 4,500 for DeAndre Jordan. You're talking $7,300 Jalen Duren or one of the two OKC guys as like a place where you can swallow some of that salary, or you get lucky and SGA, sorry. You get lucky and Jokic was in your utility spot, not your center spot, at which point very easy to get to someone like SGA. But yeah, if Jokic is in the center spot, you better hope you have somebody else in those lineups, which based on the Spurs, you likely do.
And let's see what it is that we have for. Don't forget, if you guys have questions for us, hit us up in Discord. We did get some of those in here for us, Josh. So we could go ahead and look at. Oh, never mind. That was somebody asked me about baseball weather. Not sure about that one, but anyway, Antonis 44 said, any advice on adjusting sims to allow for value players in later games? Yeah, absolutely. ROI boost. I do this all the time. Where today you're just going to get to a lot of Spurs, so it's really easy. There's nothing that you really have to change. But for a situation like today, you should have a lot of Spurs exposure. And then if other value opens up, you just run everything through the late swap tool and allows you to go ahead and make those kinds of adjustments. On a day where maybe I'm expecting there to be certain guys ruled out, but we don't really have that information yet, I'll just do ROI boost to later locking players so my lineups are a little bit more backloaded. Today, it's just going to happen naturally.
Very easy. We also just got a super chat from Jacob Dunn. 4 comfortable under $5,500 plays on FanDuel.
Ooh, comfortable.
Let's find out.
There's going to be a lot of guys. Oh, we just got a projections update, by the way.
Okay. Under 5,500.
I assume you know what under means more than Eric does. Eric always gives this. It's not the biggest deal in the world. It drives me crazy though. Eric always gives out guys who are right at $5,500. I have to spend. That's not under. That's at 5,500.
I went 5,400 and below. I mean, Julian Champagny is the top guy. Keldon Johnson and Bub Carrington are the next two guys in terms of FanDuel optimal. And then you hit another tier that's pretty busy. DeLon Wright, Mamu, Clay, Biyombo, Paul Reed.
It's
Those
hard.
are the optimal guys.
It's going to be kind of hard for it to be centers just because, I mean, you've got Bismack Biyombo, Paul Reed, Mamu, all as good value options at center, but they only have center eligibility. So, his question is about who we're comfortable with. Like, I would be comfortable with any of those three guys, but I don't necessarily know that just by default they're top value options because they're all competing with each other for one spot where you can only play one center. Champagny easily is an answer. Like, that's with a bullet. One of the answers to go to.
Fred
Jaden
VanVleet
Hardy.
out.
Ooh.
Fred
All right.
VanVleet is out.
All right. We'll touch on that in a second. So Champagny is definitely one for me. Jaden Hardy's another one. I agree with you as well on Bub Carrington. Keldon Johnson for now, whether he plays or not, it's kind of inconsequential because if he plays, he looks really good. If not, we're going to be able to make late swaps anyway. Actually, if Harrison Barnes is playing without Keldon Johnson, like Harrison Barnes looks a lot better in that scenario. You can just turn Keldon Johnson into Harrison Barnes, then use that money to upgrade somewhere else. And then I'll say for cheap center, I prefer Mamu to Biyombo and Paul Reed. So I'll say him if I have to pick one of the cheap centers.
All righty. So we had a projections update at 624. Obviously, that's going to need to get updated for Houston. So let's talk through Houston. Who do you think starts in Van Vliet's place?
Yeah,
so Tari Eason?
One thing that we should let people know about is that they have had Amen Thompson handle the ball a lot in these scenarios where they don't go to earlier in the season. If Fred VanVleet was ruled out, I'd be like, oh, which one of these Aaron Holiday is going to have to start at point guard, which I mean, they still could do. But what they've done in these situations at other points in the season is just Amen Thompson takes on a bigger role in offense and has the ball in his hands more. Same with Jalen Green to an extent, although more so Amen Thompson. I tend to think that it's going to be Tari Eason. There are other directions that it could end up going as well, but I think it's going to be Thompson, Green, Brooks, Eason, Şengün. Maybe they decide to throw Jabari Smith back into the starting lineup. Eason's my best bet, though.
Yeah, my guess is that it's Eason. What do you think this creates? Who looks better? What do you want to get to now? Because Houston has 32 and a half minutes to redistribute.
By the way, our projections are already updated for it.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Good work.
Yeah, we've got, let me refresh. Or at least somebody said it in chat that it just got updated really quick. So let me double check that.
Ownership, I doubt, just because of when it came in. But projections, I am refreshing them on the screen right now.
Yep, we do have the projections updated. So we now have, also keep in mind that this game is relatively likely to be a blowout, which it's often hard to project blowouts, but there are certain spots where you go like, this one's a little more likely than other games. Houston's a 16-point favorite at home against the Utah Jazz team. So that is also going to mean that Amen Thompson, we probably shouldn't expect him to play like the 40 minutes that he's played in some of these other starts where Fred VanVleet has been out. But we currently have Tari Eason expected to start. We've got him projected for 27.7 minutes. That puts him in for 31 fantasy points and change. So he's pretty clearly the main benefactor that we have in our projections.
Ranking fourth in the boom bust tool right now, 29% optimal, 33% chance of 38 fantasy points. Everything on the screen now is updated for this Houston news. So yeah, the assumption is Eason. Not much of a change to anybody else. Like, obviously, Şengün still looks good. Jalen Green looks all right, but it doesn't look like we're going to be getting to Amen Thompson or Dylan Brooks or really anything else for Houston.
Yeah. And by the way, also related to injuries, Steven Leibowitz asked, what I think is a pretty good question in the Discord channel. He wants to know if Jaylen Brown is out, is Tatum a better play than SGA, or does he need someone else to or does he need someone else out also to get there? So I still think SGA overall better than Tatum. But with that said, Jason Tatum is somebody who, in the absence of Jaylen Brown, would definitely end up looking better. And just the way that the Celtics have managed some injuries this year, I think that the most likely scenario is whenever somebody's questionable, we should probably tend to lean more towards them being out than being in. So I think Tatum is a prime ROI boost candidate.
Colby Jones out for Washington. I thought he was an interesting value play off the bench that shrinks their rotation even more. Probably makes Jalen Martin look a little bit more interesting than you'd want him to be.
I don't know about on this slate though, just because there's so much value.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love it, but we're starting to get to a point where they don't have any guys left, and a lot of their guys are 4.5s to 5s. They don't have a lot in the wing at this point. It's either Jordan Poole, Bub Carrington, AJ Johnson, or Vukcevic and Anthony Gill and JT Thor and Rashawn Holmes and Sarr. So I don't know. Martin's been getting extra minutes lately too. It's one less guy. Trust me, I don't want to like it, but I know he's going to show up in lineups.
Yeah, so for me, that's the kind of guy who, if he does show up in lineups, I wouldn't really want him, particularly because of the start time. 7 p.m. Eastern time. If you get a scenario where all of a sudden you get all the Denver guys out, I don't know that I'd want a bench piece from Washington in that scenario.
Okay. Poole, Carrington, Johnson, Champagne, Sarr. So we're getting the exact lineup that we were getting, or we were expecting to get. So now we're at 6:30, midway point of the show. We've walked our way through quite a bit of stuff, but it's time to walk ourselves through one additional item. Well, at least one additional item. But to me, it's the most important item. Figuring out who this play is each day can dictate everything you do for the slate. We want to know right now, who's the white of the night? Greg, who is it going to be? Who is your illustrious white of the night?
Well, and of course, we got news from the Jaylen Brown in, but we did get Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford all ruled out. So we got some news on Boston guys who are going to be sitting for today. But while we are waiting for that update, we can talk about who my favorite. And once again, we call it different things. I'm still attached to the exotic play of the night. Josh likes to call it the white of the night, but different strokes for different folks. Yeah. So for me, I'm going to be going with Domantas Sabonis. Really like the matchup that he has against Washington. And then I am looking to pay up 4 guys today. We've got a lot of value options. We need guys to be paying up for. And this is where some of the guys like Domantas Sabonis or somebody like Karl-Anthony Towns, even though they're locking early, you get more value that opens up later. And these guys just end up projecting better the next day in the post-contest sims because it's somebody who, if there was infinite value on the slate, there would have been more of these pay-up options rostered in the early going. So Domantas Sabonis, he is going to be my exotic play of the night.
Okay, so the problem here is that I don't know if we have any other valid options. I have to ask this question. Do we count Georgian players for right now? Does Sandro Mamukelashvili count? I don't have anybody.
I don't know. Yeah, honestly, there's not like there's strict rules and guidelines to the skits and bits we do around here. You could give whoever you want for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I mean, as I work my way down the list, in terms of my exposures, Champagne, Mamu, SGA, Mobley, Reed, Mitchell, then I get to Sabonis, Trae Young, Castle, Barnes, Daniels, Hardy, Halliburton, Şengün, I guess, Chris Paul, AD, Sarr, Biyombo. I mean, I am not finding many representatives for Team Us today. I'm going to join you. I don't have a choice. Consensus white of the night, Domantas Sabonis today.
All right. Yeah. Hey, I mean, you could go with like Şengün or something. You could go with scrolling through my exposures here. Yeah. There aren't really that many great options.
No. Not surprising. We're not that great.
No. Usually this is our time to shine. This part of the season. This is where teams tank. They got to give shitty players extra playing time. But Not as much right now. There could be, there's a pretty good chance there'll be a shitty one who opens up for Denver later.
What just opened up for Boston here? Because that's a 7:30 start. We lost Drew Holiday. We lost Al Horford. We lost Kristaps Porzingis. What do you like here? Obviously, Tatum's going to look a little bit better. Derek White's going to look a little bit better. Are we creating value in Pritchard, Hauser, Cornette, Shireman? I don't know.
Let's see what that starting lineup ends up being. I mean, what I like the most here, per the question we got from Steven Leibowitz, is with some of these guys being ruled out, Jason Tatum, he looks like a more viable spend-up option. It would have been a much better scenario for him if Jaylen Brown was also out. But Jason Tatum, was I getting to him in lineups at all before? No, I didn't have Jason Tatum before. I still prefer some of the other spend-up options. Like, if I'm going to be contrarian, I do prefer both SGA as well as Cat to Jason Tatum. But I'm going to go from having none of Tatum to at least some of him in light of this.
James Sarcone says Brown is out. Brown is in, but close.
Yeah. So just to
slightly different letters.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, Jaylen Brown is in, Porzingis is out, Holiday is out, and Horford is out.
Brown in now. Well done. Well done. What haven't we talked about yet that we need to talk about? Because I'm having a lot of trouble finding talkable moments for this slate. I don't have the exposures that support takes today. It's either very neutral or jammed aggressive chalk. And then it's just a sea of dudes that are 15 to 25% owned. Hornets will start Simpson, Curry, Green, Bridges, Mark Williams.
Okay. So is there anybody you like in the mid-range for today? Because that is something that would be like a way different lineup build than what anybody's on if there's a mid-range play you really like. Because I'll tell you right now, my exposures, if I'm looking at like my top 25 most rostered players, other than Steph Castle in the mid-range, it's all guys who are either very cheap or very expensive. Castle's like the one exception for tonight. Everything else, very cheap, very expensive. Is there anybody that we do need to be looking at in the mid-range?
I don't know. I'm with you. Look at 3,400, 3,500, 11K, 83, 31, 88, 95, 98, and then I get to Castle. It's all tops and bottoms, man. Tops and bottoms.
That's the way it is sometimes.
Well, I'm going tops.
You got dibs on it?
I mean, like there's not a lot of interesting dudes in the mid-range. You've got Castle at 28% owned, and then it's 10 to Sarr, 10 to Dinwiddie, 15 to Schroeder, 15 to Asar Thompson, a little bit more to Keldon. It's just a bunch of 10 to 15% owned guys.
Yeah, so I'm just scrolling through to see if there's anything from the mid-range, but the answer to me is mostly a no. The one thing I'm going to be doing in my next update when we do get it through with the Boston guys is once I update everything, which by the way, we just had a projections update 41 seconds ago, is awesome. I am going to make sure I don't have any mid-range guys in a meaningful amount of lineups from the first few games of the slate. I don't want any of that in my lineups.
Okay. We have a question we need to hit on. Old super chat. Uratal, thoughts on New Orleans and the Clippers for the FanDuel slate. So for right now, the only Pelican that has any interest, Pelicans are 17.5 point dogs here. By the way, 7 of the 9 games today have a line of 10 or higher, and the Spurs are sitting at 9.5. So it is blowout central. It's Alvarado on the FanDuel side for the Pelicans and essentially nothing else. Obviously, you can get to these guys if you want to try to work some additional late swap opportunities. For the Clippers, there's not a single priority. Everybody's sub 10% optimal. Kawhi is at 9. Everybody else is sub 5%. You're talking like 5 to 10% ownership on the Clippers side. Just not that great of a game.
Yeah. And even somebody like Jose Alvarado, I hate how much I end up repeating myself on some of these shows, but Jose Alvarado, he looks okay now. Will he look okay as more value opens up? Probably not, but I agree. He's the only guy who I even consider playable in this game.
There we go. And then we did get a member message from William Westry. Best plays each position on DraftKings.
All right. So best players at each position on DraftKings at point guard. We go back and forth with this, and we can answer this however we want. For this, I guess I'll explain my answers a little bit in different ways because there's going to be some guys who I'm just going to get to a lot of at certain positions who the field also gets to a lot of. But anyway, SGA, I like him as a contrarian spend up at point guard. He's not the point guard I actually have the most exposure to, but he's the most I have relative to his ownership.
Point guard. Yeah, it's SGA. Well over the field.
At shooting guard, like I'm just going to, well, let's see. I'll pick him at one position, so I'm not talking about him at multiple positions. Okay, shooting guard for me, Donovan Mitchell.
I'll go Julian Champagnie here.
I'm using Champagnie for small forward.
All right. Well, you can use Champagnie for small forward. I will use Tari Eason.
Okay. 6:42 p.m. Power forward for me.
PM. Yeah.
Every once in a while, I accidentally touch my watch, and then it speaks into the microphone, makes an appearance on the show. Oh, yeah. It's helpful though. It lets people know what time it is and how close it is to lock. I'll go with Mamu at power forward. That's kind of a flimsy one for me though.
It's Mamu. I don't have a different answer.
And then finally at center, I will go with. So here's one where I have more of Sabonis than I have of Cat. But I only have a few more lineups of Sabonis than I do of Cat, and Cat also has a third of the ownership, so I'll say Cat for that reason.
And I will go Sabonis as he is going to be my most owned option in that spot. So there you go, William Westry. We got it. Anything laying out in Discord right now that people are looking to get answered?
Yeah, let's see what we got in the Discord side of things. So we have a couple of questions here. One of them is from Krebsy. He wants to know, what are our thoughts on Tim Hardaway Jr. for today? He has to be played.
I forgot he was on the slate, so I can't imagine he looks good in any way.
Like I understand the logic here, which being that a lot of guys are out for Detroit. Who picks up the extra usage? Who gets the extra playing time? Another part of this as well, though, is assuming that Detroit is not in the game in the later stages. Tim Hardaway is not somebody who would be playing in garbage time. He's also not a great fantasy producer on a slate that has so many good options to be going to. Tim Hardaway Jr., that is a no for me.
Tim Hardaway Jr. ranks 49th in the boom bust tool, 4% optimal, 18% chance of 32 fantasy points. He's 3% owned. By the way, for Boston, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Sam Hauser, Jason Tatum, and Luke Cornett, the expected starting lineup. Only Jason Tatum has an optimal rate that isn't 2%. So this doesn't seem like it created all that much on the Boston side.
Yeah, and especially because Cornett is $5K over on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, Cornett is $4,700. Earlier in the season, would you take shots on a $4,700 Luke Cornett on FanDuel? Yeah, probably. But for a day like today, where we've got Mamu, who's center only eligible on FanDuel, Bismack Biyombo, Paul Reed, it's just hard to imagine that he's going to end up looking even close to as good as those guys who are projecting similarly to him, and they're cheaper.
I'm glad. I didn't really want to get to too much of Boston here. I really can't stand this game environment. Slowest game, lowest total. So I was hoping to avoid it. Frank in here said, look at Hardaway numbers. He's balling with no Cunningham. 426 minutes with no Cade Cunningham on this year. 0.61 fantasy points per minute for Tim Hardaway Jr. It's 48.5% true shooting. It's pretty difficult to be worse than that, but close, Frank. Close. About as close as Bol was of getting on the floor yesterday.
Yeah, it is hard for some of those guys in those kinds of situations because Tim Hardaway is not really capable of creating his own offense. And then when you take Cade off the court, it's who's going to create that offense for Tim Hardaway. And the answer is generally kind of nobody. Now, it doesn't mean he can't have outlier shooting performances from here and there. But if you look at the overall season, to Josh's point, 0.6 fantasy points per minute, plus a tough matchup against OKC.
Not looking great. Oh, the last 2 games. I forgot to only look at the last 2 games for Tim Hardaway. Different scenario. He'll probably have a much better matchup against OKC today. I'm guessing that'll go better for him. Do you like anything else from OKC other than Shea?
Let me see my OKC exposure. No, like all those other guys are just mid-range options. They kind of fall in that bucket before of me not getting 2 guys in the mid-range. So yeah, it's really just SGA for me. What's his ownership now?
Whoa, is that real?
What?
Is Jalen Martin really inactive?
Let me see. Jalen Martin. Yeah. Jalen Martin is inactive.
They have Keyshawn George active, but not Jalen Martin.
Could be a clerical error as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's important. Like, we have him get 9% ownership, 3,800, 12% optimal, ranks 23rd in boom bust. Like, that makes Justin Champagne look different. That makes Anthony Gill and JT Thor weird.
JT Thor sucks.
Derek Lively available to play. I mean, they only have 9 active bodies right now that I can tell.
Here's this is something that matters to a lot of people, matters a little bit less to you and I, but Don't Be Soy wants to know, does Dallas or Atlanta need to win this game? What games matter for tonight? So nobody's in a must-win scenario with this time left in the season. And your mileage may vary on what you consider must-win. There's certainly time, like there are a lot of teams who are playing in higher leverage games at this point in the season. Nobody is playing in a must-win game at this point in the season, though. So if we go through all of the teams who have meaningful games today. All right, so we have Washington against the Kings. This game matters for the Kings, doesn't matter for Washington. Pacers Hornets, game matters for Pacers for seeding purposes. Hornets game hasn't mattered in months. Cavs Knicks, game doesn't actually matter for the Cavs. Like they're going to be top dog in the East, matters for the Knicks for seeding. Celtics Heat, game matters a lot for the Heat. It does not matter at all for the Celtics. Even if it mattered for the Celtics, I still don't think they would care. They don't really seem all that intent on trying to get the top seed. That's been the case for them all year. Rockets Jazz, a Jazz game. Hasn't mattered since Karl Malone and John Stockton were on the team. The Rockets, game matters for them for seeding. Hawks Mavericks, this game matters for both of these teams. They are both jockeying for position in the play-in spot. Nuggets Spurs, this game, it's kind of hard to put value to this. Like this, it doesn't matter for the Spurs. For Denver, the game matters to an extent, but at the same time, too, they just played a double overtime game. And I think that it's much more important to make sure their guys are healthy, that they optimize their chances of winning a game that they're probably already pretty likely to win. OKC Detroit, the game matters for Detroit. It matters 0 for OKC. And then finally, Pelicans Clippers, matters for the Clippers, doesn't matter for the Pelicans.
Okay. We got a projections update at 6:45 and an ownership update at 6:48. Okay. So time to get our final run of everything in, I believe.
And did we take... We're leaving Jalen Martin in. We are leaving Jalen Martin in.
Well, don't play him. That should be the takeaway.
It's always tough. You get some of those. So you get some of those game nights, those game notes right before the game starts. They're correct more often than not. Sometimes they aren't though. It's dicey with some of the, like we saw it. The Wizards did this once already this year with Bub Carrington. They listed him inactive, and then first timeout whistle, they just put him in the game. And you're like, yeah, it was a mistake.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Don't you just love when that happens?
Yeah. I do think that he is most likely to be out and not play today. But yeah, it's one of these scenarios as well where can't say I'd say 90% confidence instead of 100% confidence.
Yeah, I'm not super confident in it, and I can say that much. Frankie's a little surprised that Paul Reed's a good play and Tim Hardaway Jr. isn't.
Well, what do we have Paul Reed projected for as a points per minute guy?
Paul Reed is at 1.2.
Okay. And what is Tim Hardaway at?
0.7.
Yeah. So think of it this way, right? Detroit shorthanded today, but you need almost twice as many minutes out of Tim Hardaway for him to project as well as Paul Reed. And also, Paul Reed is cheaper.
Much better. Much better. Hey, guys, don't forget, we're going to be on Playback after this. Playback.tv/Stokastic. Greg and I are going to be talking about all the ownership that came into the 7 o'clock games. We're going to be talking about all the swaps that we want to do for the rest of the games. You guys can watch the games with us. You can link your league pass. You can get a VIP pass, or you can just listen to Greg and I if you want. But we need to get this one in quickly. Chat's reminding me, Nuke of the Nighttime. I don't have a fun way to run this in. Let's just do it.
Boom, boom, boom.
Nuki, nuki, nuki. Who you got?
All right. So it kind of has to be a pay up option. And it by default, it's going to have to be somebody I've already talked about because I've kind of already talked about the pay up options that I like for today. Because on the cheap end, I don't think there's anything crazy I could give out at this point. There's going to be Denver guys I like, but like I don't really want to give out DeAndre Jordan here either, because then it's like if Jokic sits, then it's like, yeah, DeAndre Jordan's the most obvious play ever. But if Jokic plays, you don't want to play DeAndre Jordan anyway. So I can't really go down the road of the Denver guys. So then I start to look at where am I actually differentiating my lineups. And this is where I'm just going to bundle two guys together. Find contrarian pay up options you really like for today. My two favorite ones, Karl-Anthony Towns, SGA.
SGA is my answer. If he's as low owned as we're expecting, I have like 3x the field at least. I'd be happy to have even more. Final ownership and projections are in right now if people want to run their lineups for the final time. But yeah, if I'm going to a particular nuke for today, SGA is going to be that nuke for me.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I'm on the same page there. We did lower the projection quite a bit on Jalen Martin. We didn't put him out entirely, but we limited his minutes to at least the point where like he doesn't show up in lineups.
Perfect.
It's a good way to handle it. That's what I was going to do. I was going to do a manual override to our projections and do that.
Same. I assume you're running your final set of lineups?
Yep. That is what I'm doing right now.
Jazz G Money doesn't want us to play SGA because it's going to be a blowout. Pierre says SGA or Harden on FanDuel. SGA.
SGA.
Yeah. It's all things SGA today.
Agreed.
Just waiting on this final boom bust update to put the ownership in it, and then I'm good. We've got 5 minutes, 30 seconds, folks. But Jazz, blowouts are no concern of mine. I will let our simulations handle it. It's factored into the minutes. It's already handled.
Yeah. So I kind of like some of the scenarios where the field just assumes a blowout because, there are often times where blowout is likely, but a couple of things. Number one, just because it's a blowout doesn't mean that SGA automatically had a bad game. He could have a good game in a blowout. The other thing, too, is you could have a scenario. I've referenced this game a few times this year. OKC plays Philly. The spread is like 18.5 points. They end up winning the game by like 15, but it was a 12-point game in the later stages of the game. The starters stayed in at the end. So there's plenty of scenarios where SGA ends up playing either a full allotment of minutes or at least plays close to that full allotment of minutes. So as far as a blowout goes, is it a possibility? Absolutely. But I think it's a mistake to just totally write off a guy like SGA because you just assume the game is going to be a blowout. It could be, but that's also a reason why he's underowned. People aren't playing him in GPPs because they think, oh, there's no way he could play regular minutes.
Yep. So I'm just going to play him and be happy about it. I think that's really the only only thing you can do. For some reason, ownership's not pushing through to the boom bust tool, and that is causing me a big old problem.
Did you refresh?
I did.
Interesting. All right, so let's go ahead and see. We got a couple of questions in Discord here. We've got M Grizzly wants to know, who am I boosting for today? I am down boosting Nikola Jokic. That is something that I want to do so that I'm getting to other pay up options. That is something that is going to make me best prepared for the scenario where I don't think Jokic ends up playing today.
Okay.
Kevin Cash App wants to know, would we rather leave your center utility or forward utility open for late swap, playing Anunoby and Mobley in the single entry? Would I rather use... I'd rather leave center utility open.
Yeah. Agreed.
And then Master PJ says that he's getting to 4x the field on SAR. Reason for this, or should he downgrade him a little bit? Downgrade him a little bit, and it's not like an anti-SAR stance. It's more of a setting your lineup's best position to late swap stance.
Yeah. I don't have any issue with SAR, but kind of feels like a random 4x.
Yeah. And then Don't Be Soy wants to know, why is he getting Jaden Hardy in lineups?
Yeah, looks like an okay value.
Yeah, he's not like, it depends in what way you're asking us. Like, he shouldn't be in your lineups in the same way that like Champagny or Mamu are in your lineups at the moment, but he's a value guy who projects relatively okay right now.
Yep. 2 minutes to go. I got my final one running right now. No idea where I'm going to end up other than with a bunch of Champagny and a bunch of Mamu, but yeah, this is a hell of a slate, man. The late swap opportunities are great. It's pretty just gross across the board too. Exporting now. Here we go.
What's no idea what I'm going to have. Who is in and out for Denver?
I think they're all going to be out except for Aaron Gordon.
I think Jamal Murray plays because he sat last night.
I forgot he sat last night. I'm with you on that one.
Porter's kind of hard to say because it's a personal situation. It's not like an injury or anything like that. I feel good about projecting Jokic to sit, though.
I never feel good about that, but it does feel like a scenario where he should not be playing.
That's how I feel.
All right, lineups are in. We could talk about our exposures when we get to playback, which is what we're going to do right now, guys. So hit that like button on your way out the door. We are heading to playback.tv/Stokastic. We're going to watch one of these 7 o'clock games. We're going to set up for late swaps heading into 7:30 and 8 o'clock. And we're going to have some fun for the next hour. So if you guys want to join us, I'm dropping the link in chat. You guys can come on over. Playback.tv/Stokastic. Greg, anything else before we head on over to Playback?
No, just join us over in Playback, guys, and we'll see you in a second.
All righty, everybody. Thank you for being here. Another fun NBA Live Before Lock in the books. Make sure you hit that like button on your way out the door. Good luck, everybody. See you on Playback.